Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Faye Watt, and let's queer up gay culture. WorldPride DC only meets 33% of projected attendance and revenue, mostly over concerns of fear. WorldPride in Washington finished last night in the shadow of the Capitol and the White House. But largely, the news promised by WorldPride organizers had disappointing results for attendance and revenues. WorldPride may not even end up to be the largest LGBTQ event in America in 2025. BBC reports on the numbers for WorldPride, saying, quote, the U.S. Capitol won the bid to host WorldPride years before Trump's re-election. In January, the event organizers had projected that the celebration, which coincides with the 50th anniversary of Washington's first Pride March, would attract 3 million visitors and contribute nearly $800 million to the local economy. But their expectations have now dropped to about a third of their previous estimates, end quote. Destination DC, the official tourism organization for the city, reports that overall occupancy over the weekend in Washington, D.C. was down 3% compared to the same weekend in 2024. This means that the visibility of Pride may not have drawn the expected huge international visitors. The downturn of the entire city may suggest concerns related to WorldPride may have kept even more tourists away. Washington's mayor, Muriel Bowser, discussed the concerns of the weekend when she acknowledged the visitors, saying, quote, feel scared that an environment is developing that is anti-LGBTQ, but we can't live in fear. We have to live our lives and be as best prepared as we can, end quote. Kelly Lasco, the owner of Her Diner in DuPont Circle, one of DC's most vibrant LGBTQ neighborhoods, echoed this sentiment, saying, quote, I feel like normally with Pride, we are ready for the celebration. And obviously, the current administration has put a big damper on that, end quote. Many stories developed over the weekend. On a brighter note, Broadway and Hollywood star Cynthia Erivo headlined the celebration with power and pride. The festivities kicked off with a jaw-dropping sight, a rainbow flag as long as 3 football fields, carried by 500 proud voices and supporters from the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C. Behind them, buses rolled by, draped in trans, bi, and ace flags, with cheers ringing through the streets. Erivo lit up the night by singing Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody, calling back to the lives lost in the Pulse nightclub shooting. As Erivo gave a quick shout out to her wicked hits, the crowd erupted in joy. One of the headlines at the WorldPride DC was RuPaul. As one YouTube user said, RuPaul was acting a fool plus serving Gardner at WorldPride Music Festival, clad in full-on Gardner fantasy, sun hat, shades, and all. RuPaul hit the decks and had the crowd gagging. Fans couldn't get enough, end quote. Another memorable moment at WorldPride, Jennifer Lopez premiered I'm Free, an LGBTQ anthem with the lyric free to love whoever I please. Backed by the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, she also covered George Michael's Freedom on the White House lawn, saluting queer fans and spotlighting freedom through song, not stardom. Singer-songwriter and actor Renee Rapp laughed and blew kisses from a pickup draped in a transgender flag, while Laverne Cox waved from a convertible. The 2 grand marshals alongside Deacon McCubbin led a dazzling DC Pride parade. Outside the National City, Christian Church, rainbow flags and balloons greeted hundreds. Asian American and Pacific Islander groups, Mayor Muriel Bowser, and DC police joined the march, turning the streets into a bold, joyful celebration of queer love. A dark note occurred, unfortunately, near the end of WorldPride's parade in Washington, D.C. on Saturday as people fled DuPont Circle following violent incidents. Local elected official Vincent Slatt told The Advocate there was both a shooting and a stabbing near the festivities. At 7:02 p.m., 2 minors were hospitalized after a stabbing during a fight between juvenile groups in DuPont Circle Park. Later at 7:52, a man was shot in the foot nearby. He was transported conscious and breathing. Police have not confirmed whether the violence was linked to Pride or if the victims had attended the celebration. Despite recent attacks on queer rights, the energy in D.C. said one thing loud and clear: we're not going anywhere. WorldPride D.C. it deserved to soar, but instead, unfortunately, it limped. The performers were electric, the flags were flying, and Cynthia Erivo gave us church and gave us pulse all in one note. But let's be real. Fear loomed. The drop in turnout wasn't about lack of pride. It was about safety. When people don't feel protected in the capital of the so-called free world, that's not just a bad look for WorldPride, but that's a warning shot for all of us. We need joy and justice in our lives. And unfortunately, this had to play out how it played out. What do you boys think?
I mean, the program itself was stellar. I mean, look at the artists that came in: Cynthia Erivo, the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington D.C. You know, I mean, you know, we're you know, we'll definitely get in there and perform, especially during the Pride months when it's most necessary. But you know, the one thing that was missing from this, obviously, is a better president. And I think that was what was anticipating from all of this. It was like, I think, you know, when they chose Washington, D.C., I think we were being hopeful and, you know, on a better outcome. But I attended the one, you know, the 50th anniversary in New York about 5 years ago and stuff. And it was electrifying. It was so mass. So, you know, I understand people's fears and, you know, not wanting to, you know, be cautious and stay home. But, you know, it's more important than ever to really get out. And I'm hoping that people, especially in South Florida this weekend, will definitely come out for all the Pride celebrations.
Yeah, but what a big hit. Like 3% under last year at the same time. Cal?
And they've been advertising this for years. Like, I know people who've been talking about DC Pride, you know, going on years and years, and we've even talked about
we were thinking of going during Kamala's run. We were like, okay, we're gonna go
at some point, you know. And it's just it comes to a time and it's like, okay, maybe it's not the best choice, you know, to be able to go, you know. And it's sad to think that way because, you know, as Americans, you know, as first generation American myself, you know, like I love everything about this country, you know, and to be able to be not only openly gay, but also first generation, you know, Muslim American, to be able to go to Pride in my country's national capital, that would have been amazing. But I feel like because, you know, Trump is completely against us. I think the other night you did a story here on Queer News Tonight that Trump replaced Pride Month with Title IX month.
Title IX month.
You know, and I'm like, how ridiculous is that? You know, and it's like, so he's not a fan of the LGBT community.
Well, you can just tell that by looking at the hair and the makeup.
But you know, how about the folks internationally that love to go to prides everywhere? You know,
people are afraid to travel.
And especially our trans siblings. Those are the folks that I'm worried about, right? If there's a travel ban, if people are telling you don't come to the U.S. because you might get, you know, sent to El Salvador.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to want to come here.
Right.
Yeah, I heard an interview with Laverne Cox saying, if I were coming from out of the country, I would not come here.
She said that.
She said it verbatim. I would not come here. I would not
take the chance. Yeah.
And no, not worth the chance. Yeah. And and there are trans people whose identification is now misrepresenting them completely, 100%. So how can you travel when you don't even have proper documentation and ID?
Yeah.
It's just so, it's also upsetting that we're at this stage.
Yeah.
No pun intended. But Cynthia Erivo, yes. I mean, I've just seen the clips of her turn it out. And then, you know, she did, the next day, she was the host of the Tony Awards in New York and turned out even more the voice. She's spectacular.
No,
I'm such a Erivo fan. But I just wanted to bring that in, that moment that she was also the next day doing the Tony Awards.
No, and incredible. I mean, and think about, like Edward was saying, the people that were invited, you know what I mean? J-Lo, Troye Sivan, you know, Cynthia Erivo, Vincent, who I, you know, was with yesterday at the Arch Center, Ray. I mean, so many incredible, Tracy Young. There were so many incredible people that were invited to be a part of this, you know? And let me just say to all the folks who did show up, all the people who organized this, you guys are activists, okay? You went out there and you protested and you showed up. And I give you big love for that because, like, I couldn't. You know what I mean? Like, and that sucks that I'm scared. You know what I mean? I passed. I'm not trans, and yet I still was like, if my trans siblings can't go, I don't want to go.
Right.
But we did have people from, you know, our community here that were there.
There were a lot of people,
which is great. And, you know, we've seen the numbers dropping in Pride. You know, I think when they say 33%, how much of that was anticipated international travel versus domestic, you know, because I would be curious to see is that large percentage due to the international travel ban.
I wonder if they're able to.
I think it would be both, because I mean, when you think about it, now when you think of DC, at least for me, when I think of DC, I think of Trump. You know what I mean? When I think of the White House, I think of Trump. When I think of the Capitol, I think of Trump. You know, so that just means that domestically, people would be like, I don't want to go there either. And it would be, you know, would have been different if it would have been Kamala. We all would have been there half naked right there on the lawn. You know?
And not many people talk about the economic impact of these events. You know, this event would have brought $800 million to DC. That's hotels, that's food, that's spending an Uber, that's like, you
So
go
for
to these
people,
events, you
tips and
spend
things, all that
money.
stuff.
You know, just like with Stonewall Pride and Wilton Manors, people are going to eat, they're going to drink, they have to Uber here, they're going to spend money, you know, and that's the economic impact that these events have on our cities. And people need to start to realize that. You know, these events are important not only for our community and society, but the economic impact as well.
Yeah, 100%. And that is the big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.